Please welcome our EndNote commentator, Anthony DeVella, founder and principal, Runyon Design.
Can I use this mic? How's everyone doing? Excellent. Okay. It's good to see everybody. It's good to have friends in the audience. My name is Anthony DeVella. I spoke with a good friend and SVA alum, Donica Ida, for advice on this EndNote presentation. And she said, go with emotion. As my students know, that shouldn't be too hard for me to do. So here we go. When I was thinking about this presentation and this talk, I thought about the end of this program for you guys. But I also, it's funny when you think about the end of things, you think about the beginning. And I thought back to our very first class when I asked the question, what is business to you? If you remember that question. And with no instruction whatsoever, you guys rattled off, your ideas, your hopes, your fears. You rattled off terms. You had no idea what the meaning was behind those terms. And you were incredible. And we shared and we broke it all down together. And we realized together that business really is all around us every day. And so when I was putting together the speech and thinking about what Donica told me, and then Steve and Lita wrote to me, I thought about the beginning, and I thought about that question for myself, and it really forced me to reflect on my own journey a little bit. And so I wanted to share my own evolving venture design story with you, some business models I spent time in myself. And more than the story, there are really 6 key things I learned along the way. And I wanted to share those with you. They're a mix of design and business and entrepreneurship experiences, the very focus of this program and why you did what you did over the last 2 years. It's important to make one small note before I talk about these 6 learnings, that unlike you, a group of incredible designers, a group of incredible design entrepreneurs now, I thought I came to the business and design game late. Or maybe I was made to feel that way. The first business model I worked in was a printed newspaper, of all things. We know how that's going or gone. It was for my college. I was the photographer and eventually the photo editor, and it was my first chance to really manipulate a visual medium. And back then I spent a lot of time, not to date myself, I spent a lot of time in the darkroom, burning and dodging different images. Hopefully some of you know what that means. And one of my first assignments, of all things, the school had painted this new crosswalk, and I was like, well, I'm sorry, what? I have to go take a photo of a crosswalk? And they're like, yes, it's a brand new crosswalk. It's in the middle of campus. Go have at it. So I was like, this is an absolutely ridiculous assignment. And I got my friends together, and I don't know if anyone knows the cover of Abbey Road from the Beatles, but I made my friends walk across that crosswalk, and I took the photo, and I submitted it to my editor, and it ended up on the front page of the newspaper with no story, just a caption about the 4 Beatle friends that I had. And the first lesson there was about storytelling for me and the power of communication design. Here I didn't have a story to tell. I didn't have a lot of time. But it communicated something to the student body, or the editor thought it did. And I was like, wow, this is something that I can get behind and do. And I was off to do more and more photography for the student newspaper. The second business model I spent time in was a nonprofit called Operation Smile. And nonprofits are some of the best business models out there. And I was glad to see so many in the program this year. And Operation Smile, which does free surgery on children with facial deformities, really taught me how to design local sustainable healthcare infrastructures in the developing world. And with nonprofit, often the mission is, or the question rather, is not if, but how. And that was the second lesson for me in business, that, entrepreneurship isn't about if, it's how. And we got together with different people from all around the world, from different walks, to design sustainable circular experience design, I would say at its finest. And that's really what you're doing too. The third business model I spent time in was business school. I got a chance and was lucky enough to go up to Harvard, and I felt like you probably did a lot in my first class. I was surrounded by people who knew a lot about business, and I had no idea what I was doing there. A lot of value for me to be there. And I was nervous and I was scared. But what the school taught me over time was that not only was business all around us every day, but that there were tools that I could learn, there was a language I could speak, and just with a new lens, business wasn't as complicated as I once thought. And that for me was the third lesson. I eventually ended up, after business school, I ended up at a media company called IMG, and I got to design what they would call at the time a digital business. It's funny to think about a modifier like digital business today, as it was mentioned before, since so much of business today is digital. But at the time, it was like, you're going to design a digital business. And I was like, oh, wow, a digital business, that's incredible. But we had a really, really heavy cost infrastructure. And when I designed a new subscription digital business for, of all people, the dog whisperer, Cesar Millan, his dog training course, try to sell a subscription video dog training course to passionate dog lovers in the Midwest. It's not easy. But what I learned was good business design requires operational precision. It requires a profit and loss statement and financial planning. And you can't have impact without that operational mindset. The fifth lesson I learned was at a design consultancy called IDEO. And IDEO was incredible. It taught me the power of human-centered design, the power of more traditional, tried and true forms of design. I spent a good 4.5 years there. And really, I learned how to think about people and their needs and how to meet their needs. And that empathy is really the underpinning of every great business model that we use every day without ever knowing. And empathy really needs to be at the core of whatever it is you do going forward, I would argue. And the last lesson I've learned is now in my own business, in my own growth strategy and product design firm at Runyon, and we're putting a lot of these lessons together. We talk about behavior and business being inextricably linked, that thinking about the business strategy is the same as thinking about behavioral opportunities, that designing value, delivering experiences can only happen with a business model that supports it sustainably. And the last lesson I learned, and I learn this every day now, is about value creation. And we talk about business being about value creation, that a promise of value needs to meet a customer's need, and that the delivery of that value must be done in compelling ways. And so all of these lessons, all 6 of these lessons should feel very, very familiar to you, if you've noticed. We've been exploring them together for the last 2 years. And just like me, as designers, you may feel you have come to understand business a little late, or that you're now only awakening to what venture design is. The fact is, there is no late. It's all about what's now and what's next. And so what happens when you turn your own design mind, your own lens, your own learning towards business? This is what happens. And you should be really, really proud of that. So a round of applause for the students really quick. So as design entrepreneurs, and a result of this program, I would argue that you're perfectly positioned to design the experiences you believe the world needs as people, as designers of businesses, not simply thesis students, the dreaded word thesis students. In that way, it's not as much beyond design as it is just design. It's just good design by design. So don't forget what you've seen here, what you've learned here, what you've done together here. We'll expect much better businesses from you and from the teams and people around you. Yes, we will be watching, but we'll also be rooting you on. Congratulations, guys.